decide your measurements at the end of it. And I do remember, as some of you have been in the Commission, around the Commission for some while, the introduction of the Euro campaign. Didn't happen in the UK, strangely, don't know why. But it did elsewhere. And one of the difficulties, in fact, a really successful campaign, and if you ever get the chance to look back at it as a case study, the original introduction of the Euro, some of the ways in which, for example, hard-to-reach audiences were got to were really groundbreaking and should actually be kind of, praised. The people involved have really been praised for it. But I remember reading the evaluation, which was done after the event, and it cost, an enormous amount of money, 500, 600,000 euros to do the evaluation, no matter anything else. And it basically was a little bit like, in Ireland we have a sort of story that, a foreigner driving around, a tourist is driving around and he got lost on a country lane, and so he stops your man there who's leaning over the fence, chewing a piece of grass. And the tourist says to him, how do I get to Ballymena from here? And your man says, well, if I were you, I wouldn't be starting from here. And it's a bit like that if you try and retrofit this evaluation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for this very convincing presentation. I don't know if there's any particular sort of clarification question for Kevin on his presentation. Otherwise, I wanted to start maybe the debate with a reflection. This workshop is organized by European institutions. Most of the participants are staff working in the European institutions in communication, and also a lot of organizations that help them to do a professional communication. But the communication processes of public institutions, and in particular of European institutions, sometimes a bit complex and depend on sort of decision-making processes, how many times you've been asked to launch a campaign on that subject, and a few months later everything has changed, the objectives have changed. I think that there is definitely, now that I've been a few years in this domain, I've seen several things evolving, things mentioned by Cathelijne in terms of accountability, in terms of measuring, what Laure was mentioning as well, also to convince management on the basis of figures. But the funny thing is that all the elements that I would say that Kevin mentioned as don'ts, I think that are still quite present in European campaigns. They're raising awareness. Unfortunately, I think there are still quite a lot among our objectives. The fact that the narrative is fixed by some politicians or directors general or whatever, and yes, they still love publications, unfortunately, but we're working hard to limit this. So I think that we all agree with all what you've explained, and we all hope that one day we will be able to calculate the net payback, but I think that we are still a bit far from here in terms of European campaigns. I don't know if Laure, now in the context of the EP campaign, maybe she has also seen or is seeing change. I think that there are still a bit of Euro style, like the one that you defined, approaches, although there is a change. I'm sure that there will be quite a lot of questions from those in the audience working for the European institutions on how can we get there, how it can be convincing vis-a-vis our hierarchies to let them to allow to ask them to allow us to do this professional work, which sometimes gets very difficult because it's framed by very specific constraints. I don't know, I will work, unless any of the speakers want to sort of clarify anything else, I would open the floor for questions, suggestions, discussions, whatever. Voila. Wow, what a success. Yes, please.
Hello, I work in the European Commission, DG Agriculture Department, and we are now preparing an action plan for the improvement of, among other things, the recognition of the logo, for example, of organic farming products. And we are now in the process of thinking, and raise of public awareness is unfortunately one of the things that of our objectives. My question is, how isn't it risky to have very concrete objectives, like, for example, double the percentage of people who recognize the logo within the next 5 or 10 years, based on Eurobarometer figures? My question is to Laure, maybe, and also you who have worked in Eurobarometer issues.
I don't know if there are a couple of more questions. Sorry, yes. Are there other questions? Otherwise, we will start slowly with this one and to leave people think about. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Piotr from the Research Executive Agency, the European Commission. I was surprised to hear that for the European Parlement campaign, getting out the vote is not actually your objective. I mean, that was really quite paradoxical for me. I mean, was it because of the brief that you received from the Parliament? So that I would be curious to know more. And it also ties in nicely with the provocative statement from Kevin, who said that awareness raising should not be an objective of its own. It's only a path to action behavior, which in this case would very much be getting out the vote, making people go to the voting booth. Thank you.
Maybe just before I give the floor to Laure, also on Eurobarometer, I think that as everyone else, as any professional, we want to be successful in our actions, and sometimes, I mean, objectives have to be smart. Putting an objective which is too ambitious, it is voué à l'échec, as we would say in French, in a way. I'm sure that Laure will expand on the EP election and the fact that we're not asking people to vote. Also because communication is not the only factor, or the communication of the campaign is not the only factor of changing behavioral attitude or just the behavior. In general, I would say that we use Eurobarometers to get information, to get research. Using Eurobarometers as a sign of changing behavior, I think that unless you have a lot of budget and a very full-fledged campaign, I wouldn't do it unless you don't want to repeat the experience because your management considers that you haven't succeeded. Voilà.
Okay, so yeah, I was mentioning Eurobarometer and having a kind of a starting point and something that you would reach. I mentioned Eurobarometer because we don't always get additional budget to make studies that we could do a pre-test and then a post-test of any campaign we do for institutions or business. By the way, it's the same idea. The importance is just to set yourself an objective, and I think it's important that it's achievable, but that you can also show that you have attained, and that's what I'm meaning. I mean, you don't need to say that you're going to increase it by something that you know you will not reach. You can be prudent, or you can be maybe just realistic, but if you don't put a number, then you'll never be able to say that you reached what you wanted to reach. So that's really the essence of it, whether it's now a Eurobarometer or whether you can actually free up some budget to do your own kind of research before the campaign, during and after the campaign. is up to availability of means, I guess. And I think we would always suggest to do a pre-test and a post-test, but it's not always possible just because of budget reasons also. The importance is that you have a zero measurement somewhere, or you have a statistic from which you can start, and you can see whether you influence that statistic in one or the other way. I think that's the message that I wanted to send with this, to address this first question. Getting out the vote, not the objective. Well, this is because, and it's been discussed yesterday also in the opening session, the elections campaigns, they're actually about getting people to vote when they have choices, they have options. And that's more the political side of the campaigns. What we're in charge of is the institutional campaign. And so I don't think that with an institutional campaign you can get the result of getting people to the voting booth, because they need to be convinced by the candidates also. So in a way, and it's feeding also into what Kevin was saying, it's a part of the campaign for the elections, but the candidates have to do a job too, because we cannot, with the institutions campaign, do the job alone. So that's why this statistic cannot be the measure of a campaign that starts with, and as you've maybe seen yesterday, it starts with trying to get the Parliament closer to people's lives. It's really starting with explaining or showing to people where there's actually activity from Europe in their lives, and it's getting stronger with the go to vote phase that will really talk about the date of the elections and set some choices, but still I think the decision to vote will be also subject to whether they're interested or not in the people that they can vote for. So that's why we don't. We did agree with the Parliament, with the client, that we wouldn't do that. And then just to reassure you, was there on your comment about institutions being difficult to manage in terms of having some egos or having some people wanting to do things differently just because they decided so, or because they think they know a lot about communications. That's exactly the same in corporate world. It's just it's different personalities, but I think hierarchy is hierarchy, and people who think that they need to change something just for the sake of changing it, or because there's a different objective at the end, that you will encounter everywhere. So it's a difficulty that communicators encounter in every kind of setting, I think.
Just a couple of kind of quick comments there. First of all, with regards to the recognition of a logo, I assume that there is an urgent and pressing need that people recognise the logo, that it's not just recognising a logo because we'd like our logo to be recognised. So there obviously must be a need for your end audience to recognise it for some purpose, and therefore you can measure whether or not they undertook that purpose and see if you can link that back through research to their understanding of what you're offering, as well as the logo. I just say with regards to the kind of strategy that there is a lot of strategy comes from a militaristic background. Apologies for that, but that's where it does come from, right from the kind of Chinese a few thousand years ago, etc. But the one that I always remember was that a commander who finds that they don't have the resources to achieve a specific objective has to change the objective. If you can't, if you don't have the resources, and the resources aren't available to you, or not going to be available to you, you therefore can't achieve that objective with those resources. Therefore, the only thing you can do is to change the objective back to that which you can achieve. And it's so often, and I do appreciate entirely how difficult it is in institutions, as it is, as has been mentioned, as it is in business, to change the minds of those who don't understand the communication process and say, oh, it's 1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100, we should be able to get there. And you have to turn around and say to them, for 5,000 euros, I can start a whispering campaign on Schumann metro station, but I can't do anything else. So at the end of the day, if you haven't got the resources, you have to bring the objective back to what can be achieved within it. Otherwise, you fall into the trap that public relations did in vis-a-vis marketing over many, many years, where it became a little kind of pixie dust that you sprinkled over, you know, your marketing campaign. That kind of little glittery stuff, you say, and we'll have a little bit of public relations, and you sprinkle it all over and hope that it actually, you know, had some effect. So, change your objective to something that actually can be done with the money, resources you have.
I have a question from the Belgian view of communication strategy for sensibilizing the citizen and to follow up the new trends in social media. Our vision today is that we cannot go back. We have to use Facebook, we have to use Twitter. So next year we have the European elections, and we tried, like I told before, to managing the website Européen, and we are going to make the input already. We did it already. The slogan of European elections: act, react, and impact. Now, in our ministry ourselves, we are using very recently Facebook, and we are giving the input. I mean, we are giving the content, but my question is in the monitoring of Facebook social media. Can you give me some not to don'ts to do? I mean that we have not only the input, but we want to have results. So next year we want to evaluate more and more the Facebook, what we are using in our website of the public sector, I mean our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we want to know how we can use then the results to make more do's and to be more performant for our management, and to help maybe in European content with our other homologues of European Director Generals and coordination section. That's what I want to ask you. Thank you. Maybe a question for Lady Janssen.
This question is, can I just, sorry, on social media, because this is something that worries quite a lot of people, is there any other questions so that we can take them a bit more? No? Okay.
This question is really about means of communication, actually, the way you pose it, because you say we have to use Facebook. Facebook is here to stay, and we are going to use it. And your question is actually, how are we going to measure the use of Facebook? To go back to your goals and objectives, you really have to think about, from a client perspective, why do you have to use Facebook? That's the first question. Okay, you have to use it probably, but still you have to formulate the goal which is behind it. Because if you look at it from a client perspective, which is probably the civilians or whoever, it differs from the perspective you have within your own organization. And actually you want to help your client in this case. So you can only measure the effects of Facebook if you know what goals you like to reach from the client's perspective. So if I ask you that question, what is it you would like to reach with the whole campaign, including, or I don't know if it is a campaign, but including the use of Facebook or Twitter or whatever means you are going to use?
We want to, first of all, to inform the citizen about the democratic rights and the values, what the European Union means for them. Secondly, we want to give them the opportunity to explore more the rights they have in the way to act. For example, we have near us in our section Solvit, internal market. So, as a matter of fact, citizens doesn't know sometimes what rights they have. So we want to make more practicing this element and to inform them about that. So informing, I think. Secondly, try to reach the citizen, and that's also important. Thirdly, I think network platforming, I think with other communication departments in our section of the ministry. For example, cooperation and development is also in our ministry. We have also a communication section there. We are doing European affairs and coordination, so we try to exchange ideas and to grow up in our Ministry of Public Affairs, to come to a common sense and to have more impact for our website ourselves. I hope it's a little bit more what you ask for.
That's indeed what I asked for, so thank you. But in your explanation, I see that you have difficulties with structuring the order of what to do first, as I may interpret it like that. You tell about informing people, exploring what they know already or what they don't know, how to reach them, and there is already a platform. So I would suggest that you first have to know what people know already about their rights, and then you can see what kind of people they are, because you will find out that in Holland we say the lage zes, the lower socio-economic sector has a lot of problems by knowing rights. You can explore that, you can do research on that. If you know that, then you have some kind of target audience, because I hear that you would like to make use of Facebook for sending information. It's about informing people. So if you know who you are talking to, then you might think about, okay, then is Facebook really the right means to reach those people? And if it is, you can inform them via Facebook. There's no use in using Facebook for the whole audience if it's not targeted at the people who at this moment don't know about their rights. So, is that an explanation?
Yeah, so then you receive, we put last week a lot of information about debate online, and you receive already input on the Facebook, so a lot of elements are coming in. How you go to distillate then this information and to say we can dig something up about reactions of the people, and because we cannot do it ourselves, we are only with 2 people, so we are depending from the total section of communication. So monitoring, as a matter of fact, of Facebook itself.
And Cathelijne will of course reply, but I would avoid, because there's a couple of people that also want it. Thank you.
That means that you're actually looking for a tool on how to monitor your Facebook input. I'm not going into that detail because my level of interest is the strategy behind it, but there are a lot of examples. Maybe you have experienced them in practice.
Okay. If I may give the floor, Monsieur Rolando, vous aviez une question?
Permettez-moi de revenir, je parle en français, permettez-moi de revenir un peu sur ce que nous a dit Kevin, que je salue pour notre fréquentation dans l'activité du Club de Venise. Parce que c'est, à côté de ce qu'on vient de discuter maintenant, c'est un vrai choc politique ce que Kevin nous a communiqué. Le gouvernement britannique rend obligatoire l'évaluation des campagnes. Or, il y a 2 questions qui se posent. Une question pour les États membres et une question pour les institutions communautaires. Est-ce que l'Europe est prête à intégrer un choix qui change le point de vue sur la politique de coupage des frais publics, du budget, qui met une condition économique et d'organisation dans le système de la communication publique, qui limite la politisation de la communication. Et donc, est-ce que les gouvernements européens ont la capacité, la culture administrative pour gérer les résultats d'une politique d'évaluation, qui ça veut dire apprécier, punir et surtout changer. 2. Est-ce que les institutions communautaires, très timides, à chercher une base commune sur, pas sur les contenus, parce qu'on continue à parler de messages, mais le problème vrai, c'est le modèle organisatif de la communication. Est-ce que les institutions communautaires se mettent vis-à-vis de cette choix, qui est un choix choc politiquement parlant, en parlant politiquement? Est-ce que les institutions communautaires sont prêtes à former un dossier sur le thème du retour sur les investissements de la communication et nous permettre en 2014, je le dis même parce que l'Italie est président dans la deuxième partie de l'année et je pose même le problème à mon pays. Mais est-ce qu'elles sont prêtes à former un dossier sur ce thème? L'expérience de Kevin peut nous aider à répondre à les questions.
Oui, question très complexe et un peu dangereuse peut-être. Je ne sais pas si la personne, c'était dans ce domaine-là ou différent. Après, can we take it later?
Similar question.
Okay, please go ahead.
My question is similar maybe in the way that I'm wondering how you can achieve a binding measurement of your campaign effort. Maybe the question is to Kevin, what the experiences were in Britain. I mean, when you do public communication, you write tenders normally, and within the tenders there must be clearly specified how the measurement will be taking place. So you actually need to know the question: how do you measure the zero level that you are actually testing, and what kind of measurements do you apply? How do you achieve? How do you find a measurement for impact and outcome? There needs to be a lot of knowledge by those writing the tenders to clearly define that. Otherwise, what will happen is that the most cheapest way to do the measurement will be the outcome, because all these tenders have to be economically the cheapest offer, or not always the cheapest, but the most reasonable offer will take place. And if you don't really clearly specify it, it will be difficult for an agency to do more than the budget will actually will offer to do. So it will normally be counting output. And what can you do? What is actually taking place to improve that situation?
Kevin, I think that many people are very interested in having a solution.
Okay, I'll try and answer first. And Stefano, I think, as always, gets to the heart of the matter. There is a very distinct difference between the UK culture, which is shared by some other countries, in this regard, and that which would be found acceptable or workable in other cultures. Having said that, I think that has been the case in the development of communications, advertising, public relations, etc., with some notable exceptions. For example, with the Netherlands, a very early adopter of kind of modern marketing, public relations, etc. Italy, with a few people after, or Guido de Rossi de Lionero, for example, one of the sort of founding fathers of public relations in Europe. I think we have to make a distinction between the day-to-day business of the information function of communications in government and the campaign function. It is still extremely difficult, and my remarks weren't in any way directed towards this area. It's extremely difficult to measure and place a monetary value on, for example, your press office, your day-to-day Facebook activities, the minister's blog, etc., etc. Those things that you need to do because you are there and it is a requirement, often statutory legal requirement, that you should be there to answer the questions of the citizen, the populace, etc. And therefore, those activities are very hard to measure in terms of putting a cost, a value against it. And there is work being done on it, and I know of work that is being done, but I have to say that those people who are doing the work are finding it quite hard to see what measures. They can do efficiency measures and human resources efficiency measures, but at the end of the day, if it takes you 5 minutes to talk to one journalist and 25 minutes to talk to another journalist, is this a cost efficiency issue, or is it the nature of the business that press officers are in, So you cannot actually apply that. So I think that that's one thing that would explain it. The other thing I think is this.